Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Welcome to this edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I'm Arjun Chaudhary and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Nikhil Shukla.
नमस्कार। मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत है। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार की ताजा समाचार आपके लिए लेकर के आए हैं और सबसे पहले शुरुआत करते हैं हम हेडलाइंस के साथ में।
Central government approves the National Quantum Mission to accelerate quantum technology-led economic growth. Key domestic stocks witnessed losses for the third straight session in a row. Sensex closes below 59,600 points. Nifty settles near 17,600 level. And gold slips below 60,000 rupees per 10 grams mark for June contracts at the MCX.
केंद्र सरकार ने क्वांटम टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से आर्थिक वृद्धि को गति देने के लिए राष्ट्रीय क्वांटम मिशन को स्वीकृति दी। घरेलू शेयर बाजार में आज लगातार तीसरे सत्र में मामूली गिरावट। सेंसेक्स 59,600 अंक से नीचे, जबकि निफ्टी 17,600 के स्तर के आसपास बंद हुआ और मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में जून के वायदा कारोबार वाला सोना गिरावट के साथ 60,000 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम के स्तर से नीचे पहुंचा। और सबसे पहले शुरुआत करते हैं आज की पहली खबर से। केंद्र सरकार ने राष्ट्रीय क्वांटम मिशन को मंजूरी दे दी है। इस मिशन से क्वांटम टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से आर्थिक वृद्धि को गति मिलेगी और भारत इस क्षेत्र में एक अग्रणी राष्ट्र के रूप में आगे बढ़ेगा। इस केंद्रीय मंत्रिमंडल ने आज नई दिल्ली में एक बैठक में इस संबंध में निर्णय लिया। सूचना और प्रसारण मंत्री अनुराग सिंह ठाकुर ने संवाददाताओं को बताया कि इस मिशन को 2023-24 से 2030-31 की अवधि के लिए 6,000 करोड़ रुपए से अधिक की राशि के साथ स्वीकृत किया गया है। और उन्होंने बताया कि इस फैसले से देश नई ऊंचाइयों को छुएगा। ये मिशन विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी विभाग के साथ अन्य विभागों को मिलाकर लागू किया जा रहा है। और इस बीच तमाम खबरों पर चर्चा करने के लिए हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक विशेषज्ञ अविनाश गोरक्षकर जी। अविनाश जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है।
गुड इवनिंग।
तो अविनाश जी, सबसे पहली खबर हमारी यही कि राष्ट्रीय क्वांटम मिशन को आज मंजूरी दी गई है। क्वांटम टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से आर्थिक वृद्धि को बढ़ावा देने के लिए ये एक नया प्रयास किया गया है और भारत इस क्षेत्र में अग्रणी राष्ट्र के रूप में आगे बढ़ेगा। कैसे देखते हैं आप इस पहल को?
नहीं, डेफिनेटली मुझे लग रहा है कि बहुत बड़ा डिसीजन है और आने वाले 2-3 सालों में मुझे लग रहा है कि काफी बेनिफिट इस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इंडिया जैसे कंट्री को मिलेगा। शुरुआत में प्रोग्रेस थोड़ा स्लो हो सकता है, लेकिन डेफिनेटली जो ओवरऑल जो ग्रोथ का प्लान लेके ये कर दिया है, मेरे ख्याल से डेफिनेटली हमको आंकड़ों में इसका रिफ्लेक्शन देखने को मिलेगा।
Avinash ji, computing power is very important when it comes to artificial intelligence. So what's your take on AI when it comes to trading, especially in the stock market? Has it played a major role in Bombay?
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point. See, artificial intelligence in India is slowly growing by leaps and bounds, and especially in the trading kind of strategies, artificial intelligence is even used now. There are a lot of algorithms, which are programmed by, traders who actually take trading positions based on AI and machine learning. So I think in India, although the field is vast and I think we need to make a lot of progress, artificial intelligence is slowly catching up with large traders, institutional houses, some FIs, because globally the concept is very clear and settled. I think in India it's a new concept, and maybe over the next, say, 3 to 5 years, we could see a lot of trading happening, on an algorithm or an artificial intelligence basis, where the manual intervention is, very much limited and mostly minimal. So it's a trend which is catching up fast. Probably, you will have to wait for some more time before volumes pick up, purely from the, artificial intelligence generated kind of algorithms which are used more largely by the institutional and the FI traders. Retail is yet to get into it because volumes for the retail market are considerably low, so that does not make sense to go for artificial intelligence there.
और अब शेयर बाजार पर नजर डाली जाए तो घरेलू शेयर बाजार में आज लगातार तीसरे सत्र में मामूली गिरावट दर्ज की गई। सेंसेक्स 59,600 अंक के नीचे बंद हुआ, जबकि निफ्टी 17,600 के स्तर के आसपास बंद हुआ। नकारात्मक वैश्विक संकेतों के बीच दोनों प्रमुख सूचकांकों में ये गिरावट देखी गई। सेंसेक्स 159 अंक यानी कि 0.27% की गिरावट के साथ 59,568 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 41 अंक यानी कि 0.23% नीचे आकर 17,619 के स्तर पर पहुंच गया। बीएसई के विस्तृत बाजार में मिड कैप इंडेक्स 0.18% की गिरावट के साथ बंद हुआ, जबकि स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 0.12% की बढ़त दर्ज हुई।
The key domestic stock market indices today witnessed modest losses for the third session in a row. BSE Sensex closed below the 59,600 mark, while NSE Nifty settled near the 17,600 level. Both stock indices were down amid negative global cues. Sensex declined by 159 points or 0.27% to finish at 59,568. Nifty at the National Stock Exchange also fell by 41 points or 0.23% to settle at 17,619. In the broader market at the Bombay Stock Exchange, the mid-cap index closed down by 0.18%, while the small-cap index settled 0.12% up. In the Sensex pack of 30 companies, shares of 9 firms rose while 21 fell. Among the gainers, Axis Bank rose 1.1%, Mahindra & Mahindra gained 0.9%, and Bharti Airtel added 0.8%. On the other hand, HCL Tech and IndusInd Bank both declined 2.4% each. Infosys slipped 2.3%. In the sectoral indices at the BSE, 14 sectors logged gains while 6 witnessed losses. The metal sector surged 0.4%, while healthcare gained 0.3%, and oil and gas sector rose 0.2%. On the other side, IT declined 1.7%, tech fell 1.5%, and power slipped 1.1%. The overall market breadth was positive as shares of 1,811 companies rose, while those of 1,701 companies fell. A total of 121 shares of companies remained unchanged. Avinash, what's your take on the market today? Both FII and DIIs turned out to be net sellers, but for a relatively small amount. What is the volume right now driving business in the stock market, and has it come down?
No, I think clearly, today's market was very lackluster, extremely volatile in the very first half of the session, and I think we saw a negative bias, throughout the session, right from morning till the close of trading hours. What is important is that the markets are now cautiously awaiting for the US wage report, which is expected in the next couple of days. I think that will give a fair amount of idea on the kind of interest rate policy which is going to come again in the US markets. Most importantly, I think IT sector was, beaten down very badly. Again today, we saw a big sell-off in most of the companies like typically ICICI Lombard, for that reason Infosys, Tech Mahindra. The feeling in the market is that IT companies are in for a very, challenging time, at least for the next 2 to 3 quarters, because the kind of outlook shared by Infosys has clearly disappointed a lot of analysts. As far as volumes in the market are concerned, the volumes have considerably dried up because most of the FIs which are on a buying spree about a couple of weeks back, in the last 5 to 6 days, we have seen considerable amount of selling. Although today the selling was very, very small, I believe that volumes would obviously take off, as more and more larger companies come out with their corporate numbers. And I think that would be a trigger point because there would be a lot of stock-specific activity, whether good or bad. But today, being a slightly tepid day in terms of numbers, I think only a small company like Mastek reported numbers, which again were not very great and satisfactory. So I think you could see the volumes possibly, taking a kind of a uptick in the next couple of weeks when larger frontline, large market cap companies announce their numbers. But overall, I think the feeling in the market is it's always better to wait now. It's always better to buy on declines rather than buying at current levels because the market definitely appears to be, fully valued. The risk reward definitely is not very favorable, and that is the reason, most of the investors, institutional and retail, are probably, sitting on the sidelines.
अविनाश, अगर बीते कुछ दिनों पर हम नजर डालें मार्केट पर तो हम ये देख रहे हैं कि जो फार्मा सेक्टर है वो उतना बहुत ज्यादा उछाल नहीं ले रहा था, लेकिन आज कुछ कंपनीज के शेयर्स में हमें बहुत ज्यादा उछाल देखने को मिला है और ये भी देखा गया है कि कुछ नए ऐसे प्लेयर्स भी हैं जो अब फार्मा सेक्टर में अपनी एंट्री करने वाले हैं। तो आने वाले समय में आप इस फील्ड को किस तरह से देखते हैं?
देखिए, फार्मा कंपनी की बात करें तो मुझे लग रहा है कि डिफेंसिव मार्केट में और जब मार्केट वोलेटाइल होता है तभी बड़े निवेशक हो या रिटेल निवेशक हो, वो अपना पोजीशन थोड़ा सा प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए ऐसे सेक्टर्स में एंटर करता है जहां पे उनका कैपिटल सेफ होता है, और फार्मा वो सेक्टर को क्वालिफाई करता है
जी।
और वैल्यूएशंस भी फार्मा कंपनीज की काफी घटी है। इनफैक्ट पीक लेवल से अभी काफी 40-50% के डिस्काउंट पे मिल रही है। काफी अच्छी कंपनीज जैसे लुपिन है, सन फार्मा है, टोरेंट फार्मा है, ये अपने बीटन डाउन वैल्यूएशंस पे आपको अभी सस्ते भाव पे मिल रही है। और दूसरी बात मुझे लग रहा है कि मार्केट ये भी एज्यूम कर रहा है कि आने वाला साल पिछले साल के हिसाब से अच्छा आना चाहिए। यूएस एफडीए से कोई मुसीबतें नहीं दिख रही है, प्लस रॉ मटेरियल की कीमतें भी बढ़ी नहीं है। तो मोटा मोटी मुझे लग रहा है कि जो सिलेक्टेड फार्मा कंपनीज है जहां पे मॉलिक्यूल डेवलपमेंट अच्छा है, अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ अच्छी आएगी, वहां पे डेफिनेटली वैल्यू बाइंग हो गई है। और आपने जो कंपनी की बात की जो आईपीओ खुल रहा है उसका नाम मैनकाइंड फार्मा है, ये एक ओएफएस है। मुझे लग रहा है कि देखिए ओएफएस में नॉर्मली कंपनी को कुछ पैसा मिलता नहीं, प्रमोटर्स को ही मिलता है। तो मेरे ख्याल से ये इशू को लिस्ट होने के बाद ही मेरे ख्याल से निवेश का मौका देखना चाहिए। अभी फिलहाल तो हमको लग नहीं रहा है कि इस लेवल पे निवेश करना चाहिए।
इसमें एक चीज और जोड़ना चाहूंगा, अगर चाइनीज मार्केट पे हम नजर डालते हैं तो चाइनीज मार्केट से लगातार इंडिकेशन मिलते रहे हैं इस सेक्टर में पर्टिकुलर, तो आपको लगता है कि इसी ट्रेंड को ये फॉलो करेगा आगे भी?
देखिए चाइना का जो मार्केट है मेरे ख्याल से ज्यादातर कमोडिटी मार्केट कहला जाता है। मेरे ख्याल से फार्मा का नहीं, बट अगर मेटल मार्केट की बात करें तो मेटल में आज अच्छी तेजी, कल 2-3 दिन पहले भी हमने अच्छी तेजी देखी है, क्योंकि वहां पे स्ट्रांग रिपोर्ट्स आ रहे हैं कि मेटल मार्केट में चाइना का एंट्री पॉसिबल है। अगर चाइना यहाँ पे एंटर करता है तो ग्लोबली जो मेटल की डिमांड है वो बहुत तेजी से बढ़ेगी। स्टील, एल्यूमिनियम, नॉन फेरस, फेरस मेटल्स की खपत और ज्यादा बढ़ेगी।
जी।
लग रहा है कि चाइना फैक्टर उससे ज्यादा रिलेटेड है, तो ये हो सकता है कि आने वाले दिनों में आपको कोई अच्छी खबर चाइना से मिले और उससे इंडियन कंपनीज को थोड़ा बहुत शेयर के प्राइसेस में इंप्रूवमेंट देखने को मिले।
अविनाश, टुमारो इज द वीकली फॉर F&O expiry. What is the level of volume trade that we're seeing in futures and options in this market, and do you see any drivers in the cash market in terms of quarterly earnings tomorrow and day after?
I think tomorrow, numbers which could be very much interesting would be for ICICI Bank and Reliance. I think because these are numbers which are going to be very important from a market standpoint of view. So in spite of the weekly expiry, I think, any positive or negative surprise put out by these two players, that is ICICI Bank or for that reason, Reliance, I think that is definitely going to play a very important role. On the expiry day, my sense is volumes normally are very volatile. Most of the traders try to square up their positions or roll over their positions on the expiry day. So typically from the second half tomorrow, you could see a lot of volatility coming in the market, both on the upside or on the downside, depending on how, the corporate numbers come in. But I think you're going to see a lot of action, especially, from the commentary from ICICI Bank, because the banking sector is, expected to show very strong numbers. On the other hand, Reliance may be a big disappointment because, cross refining margins may be impacted by the windfall tax which have been announced by the government. But technically, if these two companies surprise the markets on the positive side, you could see a kind of a lot of slurry of buying activity in the second half tomorrow.
Also, you mentioned about volatility today and expected tomorrow as well. The VIX India showing at 12.15. Just for the small investor and those listening and tuned into Market Mantra, what is the level of volatility that should actually be taken caution note of by investors?
No, anything above, let's say, now it is 12.5 times, anything ranging between 18 to 19, the VIX factor is definitely something to be cautious about. Whenever the VIX goes up, that means volatility in the market is going to increase significantly, both on the upside or on the downside. So the VIX is nothing but a, metric to measure the volatility in the market. How volatile the market depends on the VIX, per number. And as I said, anything above 18, 19, is definitely not a good sign. That clearly shows that volatility in the markets could increase sharply both on the upside or on the downside.
So technically we've seen the market go up 9 consecutive days and then fall for 3 consecutive days. We have technical charts which show support at the current Nifty level, which is at 17,619 right now, around 50 points more than that. So do you see the market correcting further, or do you see the market going up, seeing the support levels right now in the build-up?
No, I think, see, the markets had gone up also very fast in the 8 to 9 days. So some amount of further correction can be possible if there is no follow-up buying, from the institutions, specifically the foreign institutional investors, because in the last 8 to 9 days, whatever rally happened was largely because of huge buying from the foreign institutional investors. So if the follow-up buying does not come in, then I think the markets could further struggle, and, whatever rally we have seen in the last 8 to 10 days, that could get neutralized. So liquidity from the FIs is very important, and I think the inflow of foreign funds has largely been related to the dollar index. If the dollar index was weak, that clearly meant that a lot of FIs invested in India. But now when the dollar index stabilizing, if FI flows don't come in, then I think you could see a further sell-off. I mean, it could be anything from say 75 to 150 odd basis points, but definitely FI flows are very important to sustain the upside in the market, at least in the very near term.
अविनाश, ये आपसे पूछना चाहूंगा मैं कि अभी आईटी सेक्टर की अगर हम बात करें, थोड़ा सा पीछे जाकर के अगर इस प्रश्न को पूछे, तो कोविड के टाइम पर हमने ये देखा कि वर्क फ्रॉम होम का चलन आगे बढ़ा, जिसकी वजह से काफी कुछ चीजें बदल गई, बहुत सारे परिवर्तन आए। लेकिन आज की डेट में अगर हम बात करते हैं तो आईटी सेक्टर अपने उस पीक पर नहीं दिख रहा है हमें, जहां पर कोविड से पहले में से देखा करते थे। इस समय ऐसा कुछ आपको लगता है कि हम बहुत ही जल्दी इसमें बदलाव देख सकते हैं, क्योंकि फिर से सारी चीजों को बढ़ावा दिया जा रहा है, खासतौर पर एआई को जब से बढ़ावा दिया जा रहा है, इस बारे में?
नहीं, देखिए, पहली बात तो आईटी सेक्टर में अभी भी जो कंपनियां हैं उनको ऑर्डर बुक तो मिल रहा है, कस्टमर का ट्रैक्शन बन रहा है, लेकिन जो ग्रोथ का नंबर है वो काफी धीमा हो चुका है। और आप ये देखोगे कि इन्फोसिस ने तीसरे तिमाही, दैट इज दिसंबर का क्वार्टर जब दिया था, तभी उन्होंने उनका मार्जिन गाइडेंस और रेवेन्यू गाइडेंस बढ़ा के बात की थी। तो उनको कॉन्फिडेंस था कि चौथे क्वार्टर में नंबर अच्छे आएंगे। लेकिन जब चौथे क्वार्टर के नंबर उन्होंने अनाउंस कर दिए, तभी पूरा मार्केट को डिसअपॉइंटमेंट मिला, बहुत यू टर्न था। उन्होंने जो अगले साल का भी ग्रोथ अनुमान लगाया वो कम से कम 6-7% है। तो कहने की बात है कि अभी इन्फोसिस जैसी कंपनी को जनवरी के बाद ऐसा क्या हो गया कि जिससे उन्होंने अपनी ग्रोथ आउटलुक में कटाई अनाउंस कर दी। तो नंबर अच्छे आएंगे, डिविडेंड भी अच्छा मिलेगा शेयर होल्डर्स को, लेकिन ग्रोथ अगर नहीं आता है तो अगले 2-3 क्वार्टर्स के लिए कोई बड़ी बढ़त इस सेक्टर से आपको देखने को नहीं मिलेगी। लोग थोड़ा सा इंतजार करेंगे, लेकिन मुझे लग रहा है कि जो ग्रोथ का पैरामीटर से हम कंपनीज को बड़े प्रीमियम मल्टीपल्स देते हैं, उसमें कटाई आपको देखने को मिलेगी।
पीएसयू बैंक से आप क्या एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं फिलहाल मार्केट से?
देखिए, पीएसयू बैंक्स में अंडर परफॉर्मेंस तो हमने देखा है, लेकिन अगर नंबर्स की बात करें तो मुझे लग रहा है कि देखिए, बैंकिंग में जिस प्रकार का अभी क्रेडिट ग्रोथ हमको 15-16% का ग्रोथ दिख रहा है, प्लस जिस प्रकार से पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स ने अपने एसेट क्वालिटी को भी ठीक ठाक किया है, मुझे लग रहा है कि बड़ी बैंक जैसे एसबीआई है, बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा है, कैनरा बैंक है, यहाँ पे आपको अच्छे नंबर्स देखने को मिलेंगे। हाँ, ऑब्वियसली जो मैनेजमेंट की कमेंट्री रहेगी, अगले साल का क्रेडिट ग्रोथ कितना अनुमान है, कितना बैलेंस शीट बढ़ेगा, कितना क्रेडिट कॉस्ट होगा। हमको लग रहा है कि देखिए, आरबीआई की पॉलिसी पिछली बार उन्होंने एक पॉज लिया था, तो स्पेसिफिक सेगमेंट जैसे हाउसिंग फाइनेंस को तो डेफिनेटली एक बढ़ावा मिलेगा जी, वहां पे डिमांड थोड़ा सा इफेक्ट हो गया था।
And in more news, let's have a look at what's happening in the US market before we hit the Asian and the European markets. The S&P 500 posted marginal gains yesterday after strength in some big technology stocks. The US stocks are traded in a narrow range amid disappointing quarterly reports from Johnson & Johnson and Goldman Sachs. The investors also remain cautious ahead of the Fed meeting this week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq Composite indices ended flat, and the S&P 500 added 0.1%. Avinash, we are seeing a trend where a fall in the US stock market is also resulting in a fall in the domestic stock market. You mentioned about the FII, FPIs buying into our markets heavily, that resulted in gains for 9 consecutive days, and now they're selling, so we're seeing a fall in the market. How important is a Fed meeting when it comes to assessing the equity markets both in the US and India?
Fed, which had actually told last time that only one interest rate hike will now come in 2023. If that narrative changes to 2 or 3 interest rate hikes in 2023, that would definitely make the markets very jittery, because any interest rate hike means that the economy is going to go through a further kind of turmoil and challenges. As far as the emerging markets are concerned, whenever interest rates go up, there's a outflow of equities which could possibly get further accelerated, because most of the US fund managers prefer to invest in the bond markets, and that is why there could be an outflow of funds from the emerging markets like India. I would believe that unless interest rates, peak out, inflation peaks out, markets are not going to be satisfied. And that is what I think in the next few days, once the US wage report comes out, people would be very much interested to know what is the narrative of the Fed as of now. But I think clearly flows are going to be little constrained for the fact that a lot of money is now being recalled by even the investors of all these FI funds. So to a large extent, it's going to be a bit challenging for the next 3 to 6 months. We'll have to wait and watch.
We're also seeing the yields in the treasury markets of the US go up substantially. The 6-month and the 3-month yield in the money market is above 5%, and we're seeing for the 1 and 2 years about 4.2 to 4.9%. Do you feel that the equity investment monies are now being diverted into treasuries in the US?
Yeah, exactly. See, whenever bond yields go up, obviously there is an incentive for fund managers to transfer some of their assets under management from equity to debt because their returns are assured. And that is the key reason, money flow has happened largely into the debt market side. So as long as bond yields continue to remain elevated, you could obviously see a continuous outflow on the equity market side. So that point is very logical.
Also, what about the US dollar index? You made a mention of that. It is right now almost 102. It's been range bound between 100 and 102. What is the impact of the dollar, especially when it comes to trading in the emerging markets like India?
No, I think, US dollar has seen a very volatile trend, and I think unless the dollar, moves up very significantly and appreciates significantly, it is unlikely that a large amount of FI flows will come in. In the last 8 to 9 days, what we have seen is that the dollar index saw a continuous decline, and whenever the dollar index comes down, there is a correlation to the fund flow which happens in emerging markets, especially India. We have seen that a lot of money came into India because of the dollar index correcting. So my sense is that if the dollar index remains stagnant or doesn't move up significantly, that is not a good sign for India because a lot of FI money will come in only after taking into account the currency impact because most of the FIs look at dollar-based returns. Typically, the rupee depreciates by about 4 to 5% every year. So fresh money will take some time to come in. So the movement of the dollar index is going to be dependent on a lot of macro factors like the state of the US economy, interest rates there, bond yields. All that will probably be reflected in the next, couple of months.
Currently in the US economy, it's the earnings season that's being declared. We just read about Johnson & Johnson and Goldman Sachs, which has been disappointing. Now, what's your opinion and impression of the quarterly results of companies in the US?
Yeah, I think my guess is that most of the manufacturing companies have done remarkably well. Yesterday, Netflix reported their numbers, pretty strong numbers, but the market was not very happy with the earnings outlook. Most importantly, the US banking sector is something which I think will always remain under a cautious cloud, considering the fact that, as of now, the bond yields have gone up. A lot of these banks are now sitting on huge M2M losses. Of course, for the time being, the Fed has given them a kind of funding which helps them actually encash, from the, bond fund which has been given by the government. But unless and until interest rates don't come down to reasonably low levels and inflation doesn't peak out, numbers from the US banking side, especially the BFSI segment in US, is not going to do well. And that is something which is not good. So manufacturing companies will do reasonably well, but the services and the banking and the financial services sectors are definitely going to find the going little challenging, at least for the next 2 to 3 quarters until interest rates come down.
What about bond yields? We spoke about treasuries going up substantially both in the money market short term and in the medium to long term treasury securities as well. What about the ones that were issued earlier? That has caused a major loss to those who are holding bonds that were issued earlier.
No, exactly. You see, US interest rates which have been raised till now have actually resulted in higher bond yields and obviously a lot of losses for banks holding on to the bonds. And that is the reason, even as of today, any further interest rate hike that the US Fed is definitely going to be detrimental, for banks because if interest rates go up, the bond yields will further go up and that will further lead to a higher M2M loss. So I think the market is expecting that hopefully, after one hike in 2023 by the US Fed, if interest rates, get, peaked out or plateaued out, that would definitely signal a kind of a recovery for the banks. So till that time, bond yields are going to remain elevated. There is no second way unless inflation cools off. interest rates are unlikely to come down, and to that extent, bond yields are unlikely to come down, at least in the near term.
और एशियाई बाजार पर नजर डालें तो एशियाई शेयर बाजारों में आज मिला जुला रुख देखने को मिला। सिंगापुर का स्टेट्स टाइम इंडेक्स 0.4% और दक्षिण कोरिया का कॉस्पी 0.2% लाभ में रहा। वहीं हांगकांग का हैंगसेंग 1.4% नीचे आ गया और चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट सूचकांक 0.7% तथा जापान का निक्केई 0.2% के नुकसान में रहे। दिन भर के कारोबार में यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में आज गिरावट देखी गई। लंदन का FTSE 100 0.4% नीचे गिर गया। जर्मनी का डेक्स 0.3% नीचे आ गया और फ्रांस का कैक 0.2% लुढ़क कर कारोबार कर रहा था। अविनाश जी, यूरोपियन और एशियाई मार्केट को आप किस तरह से देख रहे हैं?
देखिए, यूरोप मार्केट में भी हमको लग रहा है कि तकलीफें अभी खत्म नहीं हो चुकी है, क्योंकि देखिए यूएस के बैंकिंग सेक्टर की अगर हालत देखें तो उसका कहीं ना कहीं थोड़ा बहुत स्पिल ओवर और रब ऑफ इम्पैक्ट तो यूरोपियन बैंक्स पे भी आता है
जी।
इस प्रकार से अभी यूरोप में भी थोड़ा क्राइसिस हो गया था, लेकिन वहां पे भी थोड़ी बहुत रिकवरी हो गई। थोड़ा बहुत लास्ट मिनट गवर्नमेंट ने थोड़ा बहुत फंडिंग की अवेलेबिलिटी की, तो मुझे लग रहा है कि वहां पे भी थोड़ा बहुत मार्केट वोलेटाइल ही रहेगा। वहां पे भी कोई बड़ा अपसाइड या कोई बड़ा ट्रिगर एटलीस्ट आने वाले दिनों में लग नहीं रहा है। वहां पे भी चुनौती है और हो सकता है मार्केट थोड़ा सा एक क्लोज रेंज में ही ट्रेड करेगा।
What's the Bank of Japan's position on unwinding its U.S. Treasury securities to the tune of $3.1 trillion?
So I think, I would not be surprised that this entire position of $3.1 trillion will be done in one kind of installment. What will happen is that you'll probably see, this happening over the next, say, 3 to 6 months. It's a very large kind of amount which has to be liquidated. So if at all it has to happen, it will take at least 3 to 6 months. So I think I would not be surprised that, no investor or no player in the market would like to disturb the momentum in the market. It would be done gradually. So I think to that extent, the market has factored in all these expectations.
Let's have a look at now the oil market. Oil prices today plunged around 2%. The crude fell as potential U.S. interest rate hikes outweighed strong Chinese economic data and falling U.S. inventories. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at around $83.10 per barrel, while WTI crude price was at $79.35 per barrel when reports last came in. Briefly, what's your take on the oil market, especially the spot market and the futures market as well?
Yeah, I think my sense is that already recently OPEC has cut down production by 10%, and that has already resulted in oil prices moving up from $75 odd to $85 to $86 a barrel. Till the time I think this arrangement works out, I think we'll have to see how globally demand comes out, because now China is slowly coming out of a very long kind of a recession. If China demand comes in the market, then obviously oil prices could get further elevated. The economy is slowly opening up. As far as India is concerned, for India, I think we have been having a very good relationship with Russia, and so for us, we will definitely get the benefit of lower crude prices. But net, crude is unlikely to soften at least in the next 2 to 3 months. So till that time, the market will stand elevated, and I think any geopolitical kind of development or if it happens, it would further impact the oil prices.
और अब रुपए पर नजर डालें। अंतर बैंकिंग विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में रुपया आज डॉलर के मुकाबले 82 रुपए 23 पैसे पर बंद हुआ। उधर दुनिया की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की स्थिति दर्शाने वाला सूचकांक अंतर दिवसीय कारोबार में 0.32% बढ़कर 102.07 पर कारोबार कर रहा था। और गोल्ड पर नजर डालें तो मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में जून के वायदा कारोबार वाला सोना आज 610 रुपए की गिरावट के साथ 59,880 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर था। मई अनुबंध वाली चांदी 280 रुपए लुढ़क कर 74,970 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम पर थी। उधर न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोना गिरावट के साथ $1,981 और 81 सेंट प्रति ऑन्स पर कारोबार कर रहा था। वहीं चांदी भी गिरावट के साथ $24.75 प्रति ऑन्स पर कारोबार कर रही थी। अविनाश जी, कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने, हमसे चर्चा करने के लिए, बात करने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।
And before we close, a reminder of the headlines. The central government approves the National Quantum Mission to accelerate quantum technology-led economic growth. Key domestic stocks witnessed losses for the third straight session in a row. Sensex closes below 59,600 points. Nifty settled near 17,600 level. And gold slips below 60,000 rupees per 10 grams mark for June contracts at the multi-commodity exchange. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra for now. Goodbye.
Namaskar.
Market Mantra. Market Mantra.